for us, the name of the game is to have, consistent branding across the country, right? So I kind of think about, you have Walgreens and CVS on every single corner, but we don't have a unified branded compounding network, right? That's on every street corner theoretically, right? And so why is it that we have all this access to, kind of one size fits all medication, but not the same access to precision, personalized medication, right? And again, to serve those unique unmet needs. And so I envision a world where if you go to Texas, Florida, New York, whatever, if you know that you can find a Qualtherra compounding pharmacy, then you know what to expect from a quality standpoint, right? From a transparency standpoint. And so that's what I think this network will be, that's why I think it's going to be as powerful as it will be.
I guess another quick question on the personalization part. Mm-hmm. So what is an example of personalizing the experience for someone who's looking for a medication versus, let's say, another brand who's just giving the all-in-one solution to that patient or whatever the case may be? So just want to learn more about, I guess, the differences in how well you can personalize it. So.
Yeah, for sure. So it's funny because when people talk about, should I get a compounded medication or what have you, I always tell them the opposite of what most people expect is talk to your doctor and see if there is an FDA-approved version that's right for you first. Right, that should be the starting point. You should not just default to compounding, which sounds ironic, right? Because I'm in the business of compounding. But again, to respect the narrative behind the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, right? That means that we exist to address unique unmet needs. And so there needs to be, a difference in the formulation. There needs to be a difference in the delivery system. The dosing, the concentration, all that stuff comes into play in collaboration with your physician to make sure that you have, something specific to you that's personalized, right? So that's kind of the stepwise that I tell people is, if the FDA approved version doesn't work for you, figure out what that issue is, and then we'll work with your provider to create something unique specifically for you that does work.
No, it's super smart. And I guess so in terms of what you're looking to build, because focusing on the branding side of it, right? So we talked about some of the values of transparency, honesty. Are there any other values that you think you're trying to build in the brand of Qualthera that are important to talk about?
Yeah, I think, access and, being able to engage with the brand beyond just, again, that transactional nature that you see a lot of, pharmacies and telehealth companies doing today. And so being able to say, oh, you know what, David, good to see you again. Here's your refill. Looking at your medication profile, it looks like there might be a good conversation with your provider that we can have now to tweak this or look at this. Do you have any medical records that we could look at as well in collaboration to say, hey, maybe we should dial this down or maybe look at a different dosage form. So it's very, very difficult based on the feedback that I've got to have those same conversations if you go through some of these other platforms that are out there, right, or other compounding pharmacies. Mm-hmm. And so I think access beyond just getting the medication that they want, but getting the right medication, right, for the right patient, and is another thing that we want to be known for, right, in addition to that quality and transparency that's out there.
And I think for me, let's say from my basis of understanding of healthcare, I do think it's important to have more information out there for the medicines you're taking, because a lot of it feels like marketing and advertising promoted to the end user. You know, it's this is what you need for this reason. It's almost a salesy in a way.
Right.
So I think having more information out there of this is exactly what you need. This is what's in the medication, whatever the transparency might be. So are there any other ways that you're trying to promote right now for transparency? So posting content, I know we've talked about. Are you considering any other of those sorts of methods?
Absolutely, yeah. We're very careful about what content we post because, again, going back to the FDCA and why compounding exists, you don't ever want to be in a situation where you're making a claim that your compounded medication is better than an FDA-approved version. You don't have any studies to support that, right? You're not required. You're legally exempt from going through clinical trials to prove out that. Even on the B side, where they do validation studies, stability studies to prove out how long the medication is good for scientifically, there's scientific rationale, they still don't have they're exempt from clinical trials to show that if you take this and this is what the blood level,
Mhm.
So my point is, absent clinical trials and all that, you can't make these claims that you see a lot of entities making out there. And so we're very careful about that. A lot of our posts, you'll see, you need to talk to your provider, right? Talk to your provider to see if it's right for you. And then there's that conversation with the provider and the pharmacist to make sure it is right? So that's going back to your original question. Yes, there's social content, but it's very careful. There's been a lot of lawsuits out there against other compounders that have made claims, and so we're very mindful of kind of our digital footprint, but also to the sense to speak to how we educate. We still try to get good content, educational content out there that's safe, right? Versus claimy, if that makes sense.
So not to cut you off, I was going to
Mhm.
say, so is the main variable, it's about what the most important thing I guess to consider is what you're claiming, right, in the
Mhm.
space. You just have to make you don't want to basically claim anything without any evidence.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, I kind of think of it like the supplement market.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that they're a one-to-one comparison, but there's a lot of disclaimers,
Mhm.
right? FDA has not approved these,
Yeah.
and so it's very similar in
Big
that
red
sense.
letters, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. And so there's nothing to say that we can't market, right? There's actually been case law to show that compounders can market their medications and stuff like that, but you just have to be very careful with what you put in there.
And are there other main variables that you're considering when you're posting? So let's say the most important thing is making sure we're not making any claims that aren't real. Are there any other things that go into, like, let's say, your content creation process?
Yes, so it's really adding value, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think you can post every day and it just be kind of white noise for a lot of people, but making sure that the content adds value in some way. We're not, kind of like a discountee pharmacy either, where it's like, act now. We're not really gimmicky like that. We want to build that relationship that I told you about. You're coming to us to help solve a problem, with you and your provider. So it's not about just kind of a quick, a quick fix, to get you in the door. So we're very mindful of that as far as, making sure that there's information out there. Like, did you know this goes into this process? Did you know that we are PCAB accredited, and what does that mean? Did you know that we're legit script certified, and what does that mean? So just trying to get information out there, that I think adds value versus just creates digital footprint, right, for ranking and things like that.
Well, I guess now we're definitely in the weeds of the marketing and advertising
Sure.
stuff. So on the content side, would you say that even in your space, like, that social media in general plays a huge role in either, I guess it could be on the recruiting side for getting the right people, or for even on the sales side and generating revenue?
Yeah. So as far as how we typically try to market, it's mainly to the patients, right? To try to get that conversation started with the provider, and or with our pharmacist. So we can do consultations with them as well. That's kind of the main call to action, is contact us, and then we help you navigate that journey. As far as
You just stole my next question.
there
but
you
yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you work together for a while. So helping them navigate that journey, in a non-rush kind of way. Let's get you the information you need to set you up to be successful for your healthcare goals. And then so that's kind of more on like the Facebook, Instagram side. LinkedIn side, it's just more of awareness about the company, just to try to get, like you said, more face in front of potential recruits in the future, potential channel partners, there's a lot of providers that we also connect with on outside of, your Facebook, Instagram, on the more professional side, to try to engage them. We've had providers do webinars for us as well, to add some content. So, and education to both other providers and to patients.
Yeah.
And so we kind of think about all the stakeholders and how we can kind of, put them together.
Yeah, I think, and so for you, do you think there's any platforms that are more important than others in terms of social media, right? I'm imagining like Facebook could be really important.
Yeah.
Instagram as well. Maybe LinkedIn, as you said, more on like the recruiting side, maybe investors, things like that.
Sure,
But
right.
do you kind of see like the different importance for the different platforms for
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
brand?
Yeah, I think just like with any company, you have to kind of think about, who your audience is, right, for any given time. And so for us, I think, even as you've probably seen in some of our data, a lot of our website traffic comes from Facebook, right? And so that's just because we do have a decent following on some of the pages already, and then again, I think adding that value and that education. Call to action gets those people converted over to at least visiting the site and then contacting us, and so that's been really beneficial for us. One thing we haven't really played with is kind of the TikTok yet. We do understand that, again, is a different demographic that we would be targeting there, but it has been very, very effective, and we've seen that. And so that's kind of like our next phase of evolution is, okay, how do we start making sure we're being on all these channels versus just the ones that we're used to. So that's going to be a very exciting kind of journey to kind of branch out a little bit more.
For people, would you say there's like a common age demographic for like I don't want to say like, is it the end user or the patients or whatever the right term would be, but is there like a common age demographic? Because I could imagine like if it's older, let's say TikTok might be a little bit harder,
Sure.
But curious on that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, what's interesting, like I said, going back to quality therapy for life, you have everywhere from, life's beginning to life's end. There's a use case for compounding. Again, to be very careful to say, that doesn't mean everyone should be on compounded medications, but there's a use case to be argued from pediatric to geriatric. And so why that's important is we can, use these different social media platforms to target those different age demographics, strategically, right? And so to answer your question, yes, there is, a age difference per platform. And so for us, we have different options for patients that are in their 20s, and so how do we get that in front of them, and how do we utilize that platform appropriately, right? So, for example, I can't just throw up a pretty mundane little clip of me talking in front of a camera, no matter how good looking I am. It's not going to get anything, right? It's not going to get traction. It's not going to start conversations, but maybe a patient giving themselves a shot, right, to show, oh, this is how it works, or like an unboxing of our medications and things like that. So there's different ways that you can utilize these different platforms specifically to the age groups, and so that's what we're excited about.
I can already imagine some of those videos on TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah.
And similar to that, have you thought about, or I know we've talked about, but like personal branding as well for you as the founder? Do you think that's going to play a huge role, like as you scale? And what I find interesting as like a side note as well, is you see like these very large brands who are having, billion-dollar companies, the founders who are posting a ton on social media, and they're getting attention. So do you kind of see yourself investing in that? And then if so, what are you planning on doing?
Yeah, so I think that for me, the personal brand comes second to the company brand every single day, hands down. But I do understand the importance of audiences seeing the founder and kind of what they represent, especially in this kind of startup mode that we're in, because people like to back the founder, right? They believe in the vision because of the founder, making it very clear and easy to understand. And so my consistency matters, right? If I'm out there saying different things, in different podcasts, then that's going to be an issue. So yeah, I'm very mindful of how I come across and what I communicate, and I'd like to think I've been pretty consistent with kind of the vision for Qualthera, and a lot of people have been interested in it. And so with that, yes, I do get requests to opine on different things or meet or look at potential collaborations together. And so if I'm not paying attention to my personal brand, I could really hurt the value of the company if we do want to raise capital one day or do want to venture into different verticals, with joint ventures and things like that. So I need to be credible and maintain a personal brand that's reputable.
That makes sense. And then on another similar note, would you say there's any other like marketing channels or just different marketing strategies that you're going to try that you think will work, that you're looking to test in the brand that I guess might be different from other brands?
Yeah, no. So I'm more about connection and more of like the physical interaction, with people. And so that's why I'm trying to build a network of pharmacies, that are in the community, engaged in the community, right? It's very important that our pharmacies now are actively involved in the community in different ways, right? So for me, that marketing strategy is going to be more physical, right? How do we, develop, relationships with channel partners that maybe serve the same, patient population, right? And how do we co-market together? How do we create different educational opportunities for providers, right? That's a huge gap right now, and it's pretty fragmented as far as like what's available out there for providers to get education, and specifically around compounded medications. So could there be an opportunity where we step up and become a thought leader and an aggregator of that education to provide that to patients, and providers, but namely providers, because a lot of patients are looking to providers for direction, right? And if they don't know, then they're just going to default to whatever a pharmacy tells them. And if that's not the right information, then that could be a problem.
Can you kind of explain that? So you're saying there's a kind of a gap right now in the education to providers. Can you kind of explain that, and how you're looking at it?
Yeah, so over the past year, I've talked to a lot of providers, about my ideas as far as like, how we can help, fill needs for their practices. And a lot of them just say, can you give me information on this product or this product, and what does it do and how does it work? And I got all my patients asking about this now because they saw it on a commercial, they saw it on a social media ad. What is it? And so, and again, we have to be very careful with the information providers. We don't have clinical trials or anything like that, but there is literature that we can provide them, other educational materials of dosing protocols, things like that are best practice. But at the same time, yes, there's a really big gap in a lot of these newer therapies out there. And the problem is that increases risk for the patient, right? Because if I'm a provider and I'm writing this for a patient that I feel is a good candidate, but I'm not fully educated on that product, that can obviously do a lot of harm, right? Yeah. So too much of anything isn't good for you. So we see that as an opportunity to kind of contribute in the industry is more education, whether that's doing more webinars with other providers that are educated on these therapies, or having training sessions or conferences, something. The physical play is kind of where I see us headed.
And even for me, it feels like there's so many different things that are coming out every day, new medicines, new strategies, things like that. So I can even imagine for the providers themselves, like trying to keep on top of everything. It's difficult for anyone. So.
Yeah, from a compliance standpoint, you got to think there's not a lot of these medications that are out are not medications that people should be compounding. There's different categories that the FDA has come out with of, these are the ones you can compound with, these are the ones that we're still evaluating, these are the ones you definitely can't compound with, they're not safe. I'm seeing people use research grade, material, which is obviously a huge no-no. Things that are hasn't even been FDA approved yet to even be a compounded version of.
Can you also explain that? You said research grade. Mm-hmm. So what is that exactly?
Yeah, if you just Google, peptides, therapy online or something, you're gonna come up with a lot of different peptide websites, and if you click on it, these labels clearly say research use only. Basically, use at your own risk. And so, somehow, some way, that's still kind of proliferating, and it's only a matter of time before that's shut down. But a lot of people are using research grade stuff out there, and that's why I always, people in my family, friends, I say, try to find out, where the pharmacy is, call them, look them up, do your due diligence. I can help you look up their inspection history, make sure it's a reputable place that you're getting this from, because, if not, it could mean life or death.
So in a lot of ways, when maybe a pharmacy or whoever the case may be can sell these medicines, if they're kind of more explicit about what it is, right? If they say research grade, they're able to sell it. Is that kind of the regulation more or less around it?
Yeah, I'm not familiar what wiggle room is allowed around that on the legal side of it. I just know that there's FDA approved and there's compounded alternatives, and so if it says research use only, it's of a particular grade that isn't appropriate for the body. So you have like pharmaceutical grade, injection grade, supplement grade. And it's just mainly used for like analytical testing. So if I mix this together or I compress this, does it stay together? Just for R&D purposes, not for actual human consumption. But just like with any market, there's going to be stuff that can get in that shouldn't be in. But I tell people, just pay attention to the label, know your pharmacy, and make sure it's reputable.
Well, yeah, that's definitely out of my scope. Let's go back to marketing.
Sure,
Anyways, on another note, back to the good stuff.
I get carried away with the compliance stuff.
Yeah, so, I'm lost too. So on that front, I thought it was kind of interesting. You said there's a lot of in-person marketing as well, and like physical marketing, because these people are active in the communities, things like that. So, what are there? What as a subcategory to that idea? What are some strategies that the pharmacies or the providers or whatever are doing at the local level to raise awareness?
Yeah, so obviously, being tied in the business community because we're a bunch of small businesses, right? So getting involved with the chambers is a fun one. They always have something going on. Networking. They promote you. I don't know if it was you or someone else told me that even if just being on a chamber's website actually helps you rank because you're utilizing all of their, their reach and website traffic, and so that's helped us as well, just being a part of that. But as far as like getting involved, they always have opportunities to support nonprofits, local baseball teams, softball teams, what have you, and so we're involved in that level. Back to school drives, we're out there. But just getting involved with the conferences, making sure we have a physical, representation in front of the providers that are looking for stuff. But I see a real opportunity, again, to kind of aggregate education for both patients and providers, in person. And so we've gone, such such out of the way from, everything kind of being in person. Obviously, COVID, changed a lot, and then now a lot of it is kind of remote and disconnected. And so, I always like to look where a lot of people aren't looking and doing, and so not a lot of people are talking about how do we physically get everyone back together again. It's how do we do things digitally, and so could we come up with our own Qualthera wellness conference here in Texas or some kind of summit?
I would go to that.
There, and you'd be welcome, and we give you first dibs on the advertising placement. But no, that'd be a lot of fun. Just engaging people. Inviting everyone, not just Qualthera's pharmacies, but all compounding pharmacies, because that's the other kind of fun thing about this journey is I've met a lot of other compounders that are willing to work together, right, and work collaboratively together, and that's been really refreshing for me. So we're competitors in a sense, but in this very, I call it unprecedented time. With the utilization and awareness of compounding medication, we have to kind of stick together and share insights, right? Because, I think a rising tide lifts all boats, and I think that's a good approach for us to take.
Yeah, and I think like with all the new technological advances now, I can speak, and AI and all these things coming, people are investing so much into the digital space where I think having in-person events, obviously maybe they're less scalable, whatever the case may be, but investing in those properly is going to be such a big advantage in the future. And so on that note, for AI and all those sorts of things, I feel like when you're imagining AI, it wouldn't go necessarily with you're imagining more tech companies, marketing companies, not as much healthcare, but I know we've had many conversations about it. So
Sure.
How are you kind of looking at AI and impacting your industry, and then how you're looking to implement that?
Yeah, I see it as a huge positive, as hands down, and if you're not using it in some way, you will be left behind. And healthcare traditionally has always kind of been behind the curve when it comes to tech adoption. I still remember working for a very large family practice, and I mean just walls and walls of paper records, and it was right around the time that there was pretty much a mandate for everyone to convert over to electronic medical records, and our office was just holding on to dear life to these paper files until finally the conversion day happened, and things just went so much better. But anyway, by layering in some kind of AI tool to help us gain those business intelligence insights faster. I know there's vendors that do it, and there's different things you can build from your own using whether it be large language models or other kind of machine learning capabilities. That's what I'm excited about because we're covered with so much data in pharmacy, and so. But the trick is obviously to make sure it's HIPAA compliant. You never want to have a data breach, especially if it's around healthcare files, and so that's what we'll be mindful of is how do we put those safeguards in place to make sure that we're working with de-identified data to really assess all these trends, because then that helps us feed into other ventures that we have, right? And so if we, you're aware that we have a patent pending on a CBD implant right now, and so by surveilling kind of trends in the compounded data, we can identify other opportunities, to put something on patent right. And so that's what's really exciting, just from an optimization of operations, but also insights as far as, what else we could get into.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And I think, and as you were saying that, I was thinking if you had 100 pharmacies, let's say, under Qualthera, you're going to have so much data. And even for your competitive advantage as well, having AI being able to go through and actually parse through the data, you could know what products are the most used or the most liked or whatever the case may be. So I could see that being a big one. And so data, would you say, is one of the main applications for AI?
For us, I think so. Yeah. I think, there's are arguments to be made that it can make content more efficient, but I think I can even tell when something's been AI generated now when it comes to different content. So if I can tell, I'm sure other people can tell too. So you have to be careful with that. I think there's a place for it, in editing and content for sure. But if you're just kind of copy and pasting, I think that's where you kind of really lose the value of
also for what you're doing with being careful of claims and stuff like that, it'd probably be the most effective by using just AI to write a blog post or something.
It'll heal everything. So that's how I think about it. Data is going to be a very valuable asset for us in the future as we continue to grow.
Do you think it's going to have any negative effects with AI in the healthcare space, and if so, what do you think those are?
I mean, having the ability to essentially have, a computer program tell you how to maybe make a medication at home or do something, that can cause patient harm. I think that's when we start to kind of get into issues, finding ways to maybe, hack systems better, healthcare systems better. I can see that. Data breaches and then kind of, patient harm, I think, which we've already kind of seen in other non-medical ways that, users have used it and harmed themselves, unfortunately. I think those are kind of be my two concerns.
It's almost like the AI will increase the access to information, but also misinformation as well. And so,
right, it hallucinates, right? And so when I use it, I give it a prompt like, make sure you're not hallucinating. You're basing this off of real facts. And so, you can't just take it for what it is. You have to be careful.
In my prediction as well, to play into what you're doing, is with AI bringing all these different bits of information, just having tons of good information, bad information, whatever the case may be, having brands you could trust is going to be the most important thing as time goes on.
One thing that I really want to figure out, with people like you helping, is how do you there's an actual term for it now. It's called ranking on. Is it ChatGPT?
I can't believe I'm blanking on this.
There's so Google ranking, and then you have this AI ranking or sorts, right? And so I'll chat GPT Qualthera to see how it's coming up. And again, that just kind of goes to making sure that your brand is delivering on what it needs to. And so I'm pleased to say that we have a favorable kind of portrayal in chat GPT if you were to Google us there. So it sounds so old now trying to put all these words together.
It will come back to me as soon as we turn off the cameras, I'm sure.
There you go.
I'll remember the term.
But it all moves so fast. I mean, I still remember like just finishing, or maybe midway through towards the tail end of my MBA, when it really started to kind of come out and people were talking about it, and that was just in its infancy, and then now it's just everywhere, you know. And so it's so interesting how fast it moves, and curious to see where it's going to be another couple of years from now.
That is the issue with marketing, is things change literally by the day.
Right.
And I think ChatGPT, it went from 0 to probably might be 1 billion users or whatever it may be, and it's been only like 3 or 4 years, right? So things move quickly, and I think that's going to be a trend though, where I think software is, instead of taking 20 years to become extremely big and well known, it might take 2 years, with the amount of scale you could have now.
Right. So, no, I think that's fair.
Would you say there's also been a rise in the like different technologies and stuff like that in healthcare specifically, like with it doesn't have to be AI focused, but do you see that they're embracing a lot of these new technologies and stuff like that?
Yeah, I do. In our side of the industry, it's been more towards automation, and so which is it's good and bad. It's good in the sense that obviously you're reducing the potential for human error, right? If you have steps kind of automated, but bad in the sense that sometimes we put too much trust into automation and it can go awry. And so, and at our size right now, we don't need a lot of automation because, again, we're making these smaller amounts for patient specific prescriptions. But then again, you have, some compounders that are taking down 100,000 square foot facilities and to make patient specific prescriptions. So it's a little confusing how many they're actually making because you're not supposed to do anticipatory compounding. So there's people will use automation to their benefit in a space that they probably shouldn't be using it at a certain scale. But on the B side, 100%. I mean, there's all kinds of different automation that makes sense because you can make large batches at any given time. So to answer your question, on my side, in my part of the industry right now, not a whole bunch of automation. It's more so just around materials that are improving, whether it be transdermal applications or oral delivery systems. So more on the pharmaceutical side versus kind of equipment and things of that nature.
Yeah, that makes sense. And another thing I thought about was in the different pharmacies that you own, from a marketing and branding perspective, have you learned anything about having, because I'd imagine like the one in Georgia has taught you different things, and the thing you're building here in Dallas or Victoria. And so have you learned things from having those different locations, and how does that apply?
Yeah, the one consistency is really that hometown connection. It's amazing to see the relationships that the pharmacists have built and the technicians have built with the patients over time. And so that's evident at both. That was very validating for me because, again, we want to put it on, quality therapy and community connection is kind of our core tenets. And to see that happening in two different states and working really well was really nice to see. And there's been a lot of anticipation about our third location as well in the community because we built it in the community that I live in, and so there's already kind of that similar kind of association that's happening, right? Yeah. So I think positively that was really nice to see. From a different standpoint, I think in Central and South Texas and Victoria, there was a blend of kind of retail medications and compounded medications, and so the patient population was a little bit more mixed. So we had to take a little bit of a different approach there, where it's more of like a traditional kind of marketing outreach versus Columbus Custom was built specifically for compounding. That's why it's called Columbus Custom RX. Yeah. And so they already were well known as a compounding pharmacy, and so it was a little bit easier to kind of talk about those products, right? And so versus in Victoria, it took a little bit more education, right, and adoption. So, but we've recently transitioned our South Texas pharmacy to be focused solely on compounding. So now that narrative is changing a little bit, and now we're known for compounding there, and so now we're both kind of taking the same marketing approach, but.
And then for the one that you're building in Dallas, right, how are you thinking about staffing that and the recruiting there? Because I'm guessing, you have to bring in people while the other locations have well-known staff that's probably been there for a good amount of time.
Yeah. Greenfield is always a challenge because, you can build it, make it look shiny, but then if you can't, staff it and cash flow it, it's not worth anything. So, so that's kind of where we're at now. We're looking at Q1 of getting that one going of 26. And so, hiring competent staff in compounding is a little bit more challenging, right? And so, we do have ways that we can post different job descriptions to specifically, kind of weed out anyone that just has more general pharmacy experience versus compounding. And then specifically, the types of compounded medications that we do, because you have, different categories of compounded medications, not just to mention non-sterile versus sterile. So two different type of competency sets, sterile, very, very high risk, very kind of niche, skill set. Non-sterile, lower risk, and can typically teach it, and get qualified for it quicker. So nonetheless, that's how I would kind of think about it is, we're Q1 of 26, we're trying to identify what that staffing is now. We're getting as much as possible done ahead of time from a documentation standpoint, licensing, all that good stuff. That's all kind of happening. So that way, when we're approved, we're licensed, so we can, hit the ground running.
And how many people, say at like the Dallas location or Dallas area, like how many people or you're looking to staff for that location, or in like the Victoria one? So it's just like to get a sense of the head count.
No, I think so Victoria, I think we're, last time I checked, around mix of part-time and full-time, somewhere around 17. Georgia, we're again mix of part-time, full-time, or around 6 or 7, but that one will grow as we expand their compounding capabilities down there. So, for example, they have space to build a sterile lab, and so that's our next evolution for them, is to put a sterile lab there because we've validated that demand, right? And so that staffing number will effectively double with that type of investment. So in Dallas, it's going to be somewhere similar in that kind of 15 to 20 range over time as it's staffed as well.
And then so to fill the 20 people you had mentioned, I'm sure it's like, referrals or people you've asked, like, hey, do you know anyone for this?
Yeah.
But what other, I guess, are you using social media or something like that to post job descriptions, and has that been successful?
Yeah, just traditional online posts. We've done LinkedIn as well. That was successful. And then, just kind of word of mouth recruiting is, hey, we know a lot of pharmacists and technicians that are in the Metroplex already. And so just, hey, do you know anyone that would, make sense for this? So, I think all the above, trying to do, traditional job sites as well as social media. We've tried Facebook in Georgia, and that went really well, which was new to me. I didn't realize you could do that. So, but that worked for Georgia.
Yeah. And then my favorite topic is the website. So
I wonder why.
We'll talk about that. I waited to the end of the part of the episode. But when you're looking at a healthcare related website, it could be for on the medicine side, whatever the case may be. What are the most important things you look for in a website?
I think
you should check out our website.
You should check out Qualtherra.com. So
put an ad in the middle of the episode.
There you go. So I think functionality. Is it easy to navigate? Does it, can I click, easily to get to where I want to go? Can I find what I'm interested in? Can I sort past what I'm not? And does it look busy? Does it have more of a modern feel to it? Because it's important. I mean, it's basically your storefront before the storefront. And so if you look at, a website that's outdated, it loads slow, it's, unorganized, doesn't have any useful content, it's somewhat representative of what's behind the curtain, right? Is that pharmacy going to look similar, right? If they can't take care of a website, can they take care of a medication? I don't know. A different competency sets, but it informs their thinking, right? Of, before they can see it for themselves, what you're all about. And so, so I think first impressions are important, whether digitally or physically. And so I think functionality, look and feel, easy navigation is hands down what I look for.
What's been interesting for me is when I first started the agency, a lot of the first website principles I was learning was about how many, the thing for SEO, how many pages can you get on there? How many, basically just learning that the more is the better. But what's funny is the more projects I do, the more requests I get around simplicity and removing things. And how can we say the same thing in 3 pages instead of 20? And so would you say it's a similar marker for what you look for yourself or for other founders and stuff like that?
Absolutely, it's easier to, I think, keep it simple and add versus just try to throw everything and then just try to distill it down later. So 100%, keeping it simple, it makes a ton of sense.
And then user experience, you said, is pretty important too as well.
I mean, if I'm, if let's say I accidentally click something, right? Is it easy to get back to where I need to go, or do I have to kind of look in the footer and go there? How easy is it to go back and forth between the pages and get to what you need to get to? I think is very important, because you don't want to no one wants to waste time, right? And so if you're wasting time trying to find out where you need to get to on a site, it's just a displeaser.
And also, you mentioned the design, like being more modern, updated.
Right.
Obviously, we love doing that.
Yeah.
So, why do you think that plays a role as well? And obviously, my own answers, but why do you think that plays a big role in having a modern website? When I feel like traditionally, a lot of the healthcare websites I've seen haven't been the most modernized. So,
no, I think because it looks familiar, right? I mean, if you're looking at other sites, whether it be, Apple or any other kind of mainstream website, they all kind of have the same look and feel to it, where it's it's sleek, it's modern, it's nice to look at, and so by having that consistent with your site, it just makes you. It doesn't put you in their their realm or anything like that. It just makes there's a certain level of familiarity there. Like, okay, I mean, they really kind of respect how they come across to me, just like these other big brands do. So that's important, right? Versus if I just come across kind of a hodgepodge website, it's again I don't take it serious, versus something that actually puts some time into it.
So we talked about design. So I guess the other thing about the branding as well, which I always say it's like the most important thing is to be cohesive with like the brand that you have. And so do you think about a lot about for the copywriting, for the branding when you're looking at a website too? So not only on the design front, but showing like the values and stuff that they embrace.
Yeah, like I said, going back to what we said earlier, I mean, personally, I have to be consistent too, because if they see you telling different stories in different mediums, then you don't come across as true, right? And so that can start to kind of chip away at your credibility. Is like, what are you about? Are you about quick hit medications, or are you actually about this relationship that you're talking about, right? Are you about shipping to 50 different states, or are you about being in 50 different states, right? And so I think having that mission and theme consistent across all channels makes a lot of sense, and it's going to be even more important for us as we do start to expand to other states, because the whole idea is to brand every single store as a Qualtherra compounding pharmacy. So it's going to be even more important to make sure that everything is consistent across the board.
And so we talked about web design, we talked about a good amount of social media, we talked about branding, design. Are there any sort of other marketing strategies that we haven't talked about that you're looking at that you've tested hasn't worked, or they just it's worth talking about?
Yeah, I did test out a billboard, digital billboard. Really? Because I always see it going over I-30. It's a massive digital billboard, and I said no, it'd be kind of cool to see branding up there, and then also to see if it actually works. Because again, I'm looking at different things that not a lot of people are doing right now. So billboard, print. Mm-hmm. We've done some mail as well. I think we've talked about that. That's been kind of a spotty, kind of depending on what the content was and some of the A/B testing. But so I've done the billboard. Didn't see anything.
I've always wanted to ask. This is a good opportunity because I've always wanted to talk about that. So, what was the process like getting the billboard, and then do you just wait like a 30-day period and then test to see how it works, or how is that kind of like?
Yeah. So the idea was, okay, hey, we're gonna do a mailing campaign in the same area as well as the billboard, and then see if that had any impact on traffic, right, to the website or conversions into what we're working on. And the short answer was no. And so we didn't see barely any traffic from it, and it it was looping, so it was like 8 seconds, I think. We were only maybe, I think, 1 of 8 or 9. So there was some decent, I guess, exposure. I even had people say that they saw it as well, that I didn't even tell about it, just to see if it would, pop up during their commute. So it was seen. It just didn't, I guess, come across. You're also driving, 60, 70 miles an hour. So you're like, oh, let me stop and do this real quick, So you might remember it, but if 5 other things happen by the time you get to where you're going, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And so, it reminds
me of the principle of like the quality of traffic. So like not literally with like the car traffic, but like on TikTok, someone would view your thing for like 5 seconds, right? But if they're watching a 2-hour long form video, it'd be a little bit more impressionable. And so I think my guess is that as they're driving, they might see it, consume it. They might even like the billboard, but they're not going to convert on it because they're literally driving.
They're literally driving, exactly, yeah. And I think it's part of, I mean, so go back to your process, yeah. So first you find out where the billboard is advertised online, and so you find out who owns it or whatever. Typically there's like a name under it, so like Lamar or whatever, and then you contact them, you put in the address or the area, and then you see the billboards kind of there. You click it, you ask for a quote, and you just engage, right? And then give them a simple file. It was pretty easy. And then I just did a 4-week test just to kind of see, how it did. And I'm sure that if you had, so you saw probably all the little Mint dentistry signs around. I mean, they had billboards everywhere. So I think if we did a campaign like that where we just covered the whole Metroplex, plus some direct mail and things like that, it would be different. So again, I did it on a very, very small scale. I like to test things very, very small. Even if the results come back, small data points positive, okay, what does it look like to invest a little bit more in that, right? And I think we tried that on Google Ads and things like that. Like, let's just get some data back and then decide whether or not we need to iterate or, just abandoning it altogether. And I like that iterative process, just in entrepreneurship in general. Like just try things, right? Just try things in a safe, controlled way with expected outcomes on the other side, right? Your hypothesis or whatever the case may be, and then decide whether or not to keep going forward or not.
Yeah, I feel like a successful billboard strategy, from what I've seen, like I saw Monday CRM, they had every single billboard that it must have had in the city. And I saw them everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if you're going to invest in billboards, having one billboard almost isn't worth it. But if you're going to cover an entire city or an area, then you might get people, because you'll think, wow, I've seen this billboard everywhere.
Yeah. Or I just need to stand on top of a big 18-wheeler or something like that. So like some of the other ones.
Yeah, 100%. And so tested billboards. Any other major things that you're looking to try or that you have tried and didn't really work as well?
No, like I said, right now we're really focused on channel partners and then just mainly pull through with the existing customer base with our new products. So we do have new product menu. Kind of diversification is a big strategy for us, and so it's just, again, reaching those current provider, current patient populations to say this is what we also have. Again, focusing on our core of compounding, in addition to finding channel partners that serve the same population, so that way we can, work together.
And my last and most important question. So in let's say 5 to 10 years, where do you see Qualthera?
5 to 10 years?
And we can go longer than that, but we'll say
absolutely. I think in 5 to 10 years, you're going to see us cover at least half the country and with pharmacies. And so we have a pretty aggressive growth strategy, and things are lining up well to where we can continue to execute on the vision. And so, I would be surprised if 5 to 10 years from now you're not seeing a Qualtherra pharmacy, at least in half of the states in the country. And we're really excited about that, and really look forward to bringing custom medication to the masses.
That's awesome. So where can people find you? Where can people help you out? Overall, thanks for being here. And where can people find you?
Yeah, so I had someone at Omis Digital create a very nice website called Qualtherra.com. On there, you can also see our subsidiaries. So we have Qualtherra Pharmaceuticals, which is the patent pending technology that we have, as well as our 2 pharmacies. And so please give it a visit and reach out on there. You can also, like I said, contact us directly through any of the pharmacy websites as well. So if you have specific questions about medication, we'd like to connect with the pharmacist, we'd love to chat with you.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for the time.